Imagine being called into an office where guards stand nearby. Your hands shake as you're blamed for stealing $80,000 rings that went missing while you were in charge. 6 years later, you're looking at job applications when you see a familiar name. The door opens, and there she is, the woman who blamed you falsely, stole those rings, and ruined your good name. She hasn't seen you yet. Your finger hovers over the no button as you smile. Today's story is about a warehouse supervisor whose careful tracking system couldn't protect him from a planned setup, until a helpful coworker, secret recordings, and a surprise job interview gave him the perfect work payback. I'll never forget her face when she walked into that interview room. 6 years had passed since Vanessa stole those expensive rings, faked my signature, and watched guards walk me out of the building. Now she stood before me, expensive purse in hand, perfect-looking resume ready, not knowing whose desk she'd approached. She looked shocked when she saw me. Her fake smile disappeared as she turned pale. This woman had spent 5 years in prison for what she did to me and the company, and now she was asking me for a job without knowing who I was. "Ah, Vanessa," I said, saying her name slowly. "Remember me? If workplace justice exists, it has just shown up perfectly. Let me take you back to where it all began, before the court case that proved I was innocent, before the proof that showed her wrongdoing. I'd worked 12 years at Elite Ship, fixing their messy warehouse to make it very well run. Our system was so good, magazines wrote about it. I created safety rules for expensive things like those rings. I believed hard work and keeping records would keep me safe. I never thought someone would use the same systems I built to blame me for stealing. The security team escorts me through the glass hallway, past the curious stares of my former colleagues. My heart is pounding, but I keep my face neutral. This is the moment I've been preparing for. The boardroom door opens, and I see them all waiting, executives from Elite Ship and the acquiring company seated around the polished table. Legal counsel on both sides. And there, at the far end, is Vanessa. She looks up at me with that same smug expression I remember from the day I was fired. For a split second, confusion crosses her face. She clearly didn't expect to see me here. I take my seat directly across from her as the acquisition team's consultant. The room falls silent as I reach into my briefcase and place a single USB drive on the table. I brought the receipts no one expected, including forensic proof of who really took those $80,000 rings, and why the security footage conveniently failed that day. Vanessa's smile vanishes. The CEO leans forward. I never thought my career would become a corporate thriller. 12 years ago, I joined Elite Ship Distribution as an entry-level warehouse associate with nothing but a high school diploma and a knack for organizing systems. The warehouse was chaos back then. Inventory discrepancies, shipping errors, and lost products costing the company millions annually. But I saw patterns where others saw problems. Within 3 years, I developed a tracking methodology that reduced errors by 78%. 2 years after that, I was promoted to warehouse supervisor, managing a team of 25. By year 7, Supply Chain Quarterly had featured our inventory system as revolutionary in mid-sized distribution. The CEO would bring potential clients through our warehouse like it was a showroom. "This is where the magic happens," he'd say, as I demonstrated how we could locate any product within seconds. I love that company. I put in 60-hour weeks developing protocols for high-value items, created backup systems for every critical process. The warehouse wasn't just my department. It was my professional identity. Then Vanessa Reeves arrived, hired as our new sales director. She came with an MBA from Wharton and connections to 2 board members. From day one, she carried herself like she was CO in waiting. In meetings, she'd speak about modernizing outdated systems while looking directly at me. At first, I thought her ambition might benefit all departments. That's what teamwork means, right? I even volunteered to help her team understand our inventory capabilities better. Then I found the first red flag in what she called a routine budget reallocation. My name had been removed from the operations committee. When I asked about it, she smiled thinly and said, "We're streamlining communication channels. Don't worry, I'll represent warehouse concerns." Has this happened to your workplace? When someone new arrives and immediately starts redrawing organizational boundaries? I knew then that my documentation habits would become even more important as tensions escalated. I had no idea just how crucial those records would eventually become. Over the next few months, Vanessa's encroachment became impossible to ignore. What started as small boundary tests evolved into something more calculated. I first noticed it during the quarterly board presentation. I'd sent her the warehouse efficiency data she'd requested, standard metrics my team tracked religiously, fulfillment rates, processing times, error percentages, all clearly labeled with my department headers. When I walked into the boardroom that day, the presentation was already loaded on the screen, slide after slide of my data, except now they were branded as sales-driven efficiency initiatives with Vanessa listed as the project lead. My name appeared nowhere. As you can see, she explained to the board, our new cross-functional approach has yielded remarkable improvements in warehouse operations. I sat there, stunned into silence. The board members nodded approvingly, complimenting her fresh perspective. When I tried to clarify later, our CEO brushed it off. The important thing is the company's moving forward. Let's not get hung up on who did what. The following week, I discovered my team had been excluded from 3 separate meetings about warehouse operations. When I checked the calendar invites, I found they'd been scheduled during my regular inventory review, a standing appointment Vanessa knew about. "Oh, did you not get the updates?" she asked innocently when confronted. "We needed to move quickly, and you always seem so busy with day-to-day management." Then came this Special Operations Task Force, a team Vanessa assembled that essentially duplicated my department's work. They'd request the same data we'd already provided, run parallel processes, and create confusion among staff about which procedures to follow. I wasn't naive. I understood office politics. So I kept meticulous records, email trails showing my original work, timestamp verified documents, meeting notes with witness signatures. I archived everything, sensing I might need it someday. After the quarterly presentation, where she'd claimed my department's achievements again, I finally requested a private meeting with Vanessa and our CEO. I brought documentation showing the original source of the data she'd presented. "Marcus is certainly thorough," she said with a laugh that somehow made me sound paranoid rather than prepared. As we were leaving, she placed a hand on my shoulder and smiled. "Let's just keep these reporting lines between us. Some things are better handled centrally." The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Have you ever watched someone take credit for your work while executives nodded along? 2 days later, security footage shows a courier arriving at our facility with a package from Platinum Designs. The signature tracking confirms receipt of the custom ring set ordered by a well-known celebrity client, valued at over $80,000. The moment those rings entered our building, the countdown to my professional nightmare began. High-value items always followed a special protocol at Elite Ship, one I had personally designed after a minor inventory discrepancy 3 years earlier. The system was foolproof. Dual verification at every handoff, tamper-evident packaging, secure vault storage, and most importantly, comprehensive digital and paper trails. For items valued over $10,000, we added biometric access restrictions and continuous video monitoring. The celebrity client's custom platinum rings, valued at $80,000, represented exactly the kind of high-profile delivery our system was built to protect, which is why the maintenance on our security systems the previous week struck me as odd. No one had informed me about scheduled downtime. Yet IT technicians I'd never seen before spent 2 days working on the cameras and badge readers around the secure storage area. "Just routine updates," the technician said when I asked. "Ms. Reeves authorized it." Of course she did. The rings arrived on Tuesday afternoon. I supervised the intake personally, verifying the courier's credentials, documenting the sealed package condition, checking the item against order specifications. Everything matched. I escorted the rings to the vault myself, logged them into inventory, and secured them with both electronic and physical locks. At 9:43 a.m. Wednesday, I received a frantic call from the morning shift supervisor. "The vault audit shows a discrepancy," he said, his voice shaking. "The platinum rings aren't where they're supposed to be." I rushed to the secure area. The rings were indeed missing. though the vault showed no signs of forced entry. I immediately initiated our security protocol: area lockdown, access log review, and notification to upper management. That's when things got strange. When I tried to pull the security footage, the system showed a 4-hour gap, exactly covering the time frame when the rings must have disappeared. The access logs were similarly incomplete, showing entries but no exits for that time period. I later discovered that HR had scheduled a preliminary review of my department the day before, without notifying me. The review focused specifically on our handling procedures for high-value items. The timing wasn't just suspicious, it was surgical. As I stood there, staring at the empty shelf where $80,000 worth of custom platinum rings should have been, the realization hit me like a physical blow. I wasn't dealing with ordinary office politics. I was being set up. Has your workplace ever had convenient system failures right when accountability mattered most? As I pulled up the security badge access logs to find answers, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Among the authorized entries to the secure area was a 2:14 a.m. timestamp with Vanessa Reeves' badge ID. I was reviewing inventory reports when my desk phone rang. "Marcus, please come to the executive conference room immediately." It was the CEO's assistant, her voice unusually formal. As I approached the room, I saw 2 security guards stationed outside. Not our regular team, but contractors I'd never seen before. My stomach tightened. Inside sat our CEO, the CFO, someone from legal, and Vanessa. No one made eye contact as I entered. "Please sit down, Marcus," the CEO said, gesturing to the lone chair across from them. "No pleasantries, no preamble. We have a serious situation," he continued. "The missing platinum rings have been traced to an unauthorized transfer." Vanessa slid a document across the table. It appeared to be a shipping authorization form with my signature at the bottom, scheduling an after-hours pickup for the rings. A complete fabrication. "I never signed this," I said immediately. "This is forged. It matches your signature on file," the legal representative countered. "This authorization was used to remove the items from secured storage," Vanessa added, her voice dripping with rehearsed concern. "The system logs show your credentials were used." I tried to explain about seeing her badge access at 2:14 a.m., about the convenient security system maintenance, about the HR review nobody told me about. The CEO raised his hand, cutting me off. "Marcus, we've worked together a long time, which is why we're handling this internally rather than involving authorities." That's when I realized they'd already decided. This wasn't an investigation, it was a formality. The signature looked like mine, but the metadata didn't lie. The document had been created the night before, when I wasn't even in the building. I pointed this out, showing them the document properties on the digital copy. For a moment, doubt flickered across the CEO's face. Then Vanessa smoothly interjected. "The original was signed yesterday. This is just the scan we made this morning for documentation." 30 minutes later, I was escorted to my desk to collect personal belongings, then walked out of the building I'd helped transform over 12 years. No severance. No opportunity to say goodbye to my team. My key card deactivated before I reached the parking lot. In my rearview mirror, I watched Vanessa observing my exit from the second-floor window, phone pressed her ear. "Has your workplace ever rushed to judgment before gathering all the facts?" 3 hours later, still sitting stunned in my apartment, I received a text from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Tara Chun from Inventory. What happened today wasn't right. I saw something last night you need to know about. Can we meet somewhere private?" I chose a coffee shop 20 miles from Elite Ship, far enough that we wouldn't run into colleagues. When Tara Chun walked in, she scanned the room nervously before spotting me in the corner booth. She'd always been one of the quieter members of the inventory team, meticulous, observant, but rarely speaking up in meetings. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, sliding into the seat with her back to the wall. I couldn't just watch what happened and say nothing. Tara had been working late the night before the rings disappeared. Around 11 p.m., she'd seen Vanessa enter the warehouse area. Unusual in itself, as executives rarely visited after hours. More suspicious was that Vanessa wasn't alone. A man Tara didn't recognize was with her, carrying what looked like IT equipment. They were checking camera angles, Tara said. I heard her say something about blind spots and timing the loops. I ducked behind shelving so they wouldn't see me. My hands tightened around my coffee cup. Did you tell anyone? Who would believe me against her? But that's not all. Tara pulled out a thumb drive. I've been tracking inventory discrepancies for months. She opened her laptop and showed me spreadsheets documenting a pattern. Small but valuable items disappearing, followed by inventory adjustments that wrote them off as damaged or miscounted. Nothing large enough to trigger an audit, but together they represented significant value. The system shows these adjustments happening during night shifts, but I work those shifts. These didn't happen when the system says they did. Why were you tracking this? I asked. Tara hesitated. 6 months ago, my count didn't match the system. I reported it, and suddenly I was on probation for attention to detail issues. I started keeping my own records after that. Tara showed me a strange pattern of inventory adjustments, all signed off by the same manager, who reported directly to Vanessa. They wanted me to sign off on these too, just weeks before the incident. That's why I think you were targeted, she explained. You started asking questions about these adjustments last month. A week later, they scheduled that maintenance on the security systems. For the first time since being escorted out, I felt something other than shock and despair. A tiny spark of vindication. I wasn't imagining things. What do you want me to do with this? I asked. Keep it safe, she said. I'll keep documenting everything I see. Maybe someday we'll have enough proof. We agreed on secure communication channels. Tara would continue gathering evidence while I focused on rebuilding my shattered career. It wasn't justice, but it was a start. Have you ever had a colleague who noticed something wrong but was too afraid to speak up officially? 2 weeks later, I walked into the reception area of Midstate Logistics, a smaller competitor across town. The hiring manager greeted me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I knew what she was thinking. Why would a warehouse supervisor with my experience be available so suddenly? What wasn't I telling her about my departure from Elite Ship? Starting over at Midstate Logistics felt like a demotion in every way possible. My title was Inventory Coordinator, a polite way of saying I had no real authority. My salary was 40% less than what I'd earned at Elite Ship. My workspace was a desk in the corner of a warehouse 1/4 the size of what I used to manage. We're taking a chance on you, my new boss reminded me during my first week. The unspoken part hung in the air. Despite my experience, the circumstances of my departure from Elite Ship made me a risk. I swallowed my pride and focused on the basics. I organized their chaotic shipping area, implemented simple tracking improvements, stayed late without being asked. Each small win helped rebuild not just my reputation, but my confidence. Meanwhile, I maintained relationships with vendors and industry contacts who worked with both companies. I never directly asked about Elite Ship. That would seem suspicious, but I listened carefully when they volunteered information. Their fulfillment times have gotten worse, one supplier mentioned casually, and they've had 3 shipments go missing in the last month. Tara and I communicated through an encrypted messaging app, using code words for people and situations. Every few weeks, she'd send new documentation, inventory discrepancies, unusual shipment routings, inexplicable schedule changes. They've created a new shipping category called Executive Priority, she wrote one night. These packages bypass normal verification. No dual sign-off required. I began mapping the patterns. High-value items entering inventory, then disappearing during specific shifts. Shipments marked as returned to vendor that vendors never received. Special handling instructions always coming from the same small group of people, all reporting to Vanessa. 4 months into my new job, I earned my first promotion at Midstate. The small victory felt enormous after everything I'd lost. That same week, Tara sent photos of shipping labels with an unusual destination address, a warehouse registered to a company I'd never heard of. These items are logged as damage in our system, she wrote, but they're being shipped out in perfect condition. I started researching the address, tracing it through property records to a limited liability company registered in Nevada. The ownership was hidden behind layers of corporate entities, but I kept digging. 6 months later, Tara sent me an anonymous message, Check the shell company registrations for VR exclusive imports. Same initials. The implications hit me like a thunderbolt. VR, Vanessa Reeves. I pulled up the corporate registration documents and began cross-referencing them with the shipping records Tara had been collecting. Dates, values, item descriptions, everything started connecting. This wasn't just about framing me for stealing some rings. This was systematic theft on a massive scale, happening right under everyone's noses. Have you ever had to rebuild your professional reputation after someone deliberately damaged it? As I dove deeper into property records and corporate filings, Tara was in the elite ship warehouse, carefully photographing yet another mislabeled package being loaded onto a truck bound for VR exclusive imports. The registration documents for VR exclusive imports confirmed what we suspected. The company was owned by Bradford Reeves, Vanessa's husband. The mailing address matched their home in the suburbs. The formation date was exactly 3 months after Vanessa joined Elite Ship. This wasn't opportunistic theft. This was calculated from the beginning. I created a secure digital workspace where Tara and I could compile our evidence. Piece by piece, we reconstructed Vanessa's operation. First, she'd established the shell company, VR exclusive imports, as the destination for stolen goods. Then she'd systematically placed loyal people in key positions throughout the company: inventory control, shipping, security, and IT. Tara's documentation was meticulous. She'd photographed dozens of packages labeled as damaged returns that contained perfect, high-value merchandise. These items were logged in Elite Ship's system as destroyed or defective, but in reality, they were being shipped to the warehouse registered to VR exclusive. They do this every Tuesday and Thursday night, Tara wrote. Always when the regular shipping supervisor is off. Always handled by the same 3 people. I dug into financial records through public databases. 8 months after starting at Elite Ship, Vanessa and her husband had purchased a vacation home in Aspen. A year later, she began arriving at work in a new luxury SUV. Bradford Reeves, previously employed at a mid-level marketing firm, had suddenly started a successful import business, according to their social media. The timeline of her operation became clear. Year 1, establish shell company, place loyal people in key positions. Year 2, begin small-scale theft of high-value items, testing the system. Year 3, expand operation, create executive priority, shipping category to bypass controls. Year 4, target and eliminate anyone who noticed discrepancies, including me. The missing platinum rings weren't a one-time theft. They were part of an escalating pattern. Based on the inventory discrepancies Tara had documented, Vanessa's operation had stolen over $3.7 million in merchandise over 4 years. The approval chain for damaged goods disposal always traced back to someone loyal to Vanessa. But the digital authorization codes came from higher up. Someone was sharing credentials. When I looked closer at the authorization patterns, I realized the chief operating officer's login was being used at strange hours. 3 a.m. authorizations, approvals while he was documented to be on vacation. I think she has the COO's credentials, I told Tara. That explains how she's bypassing the final approval safeguards. The question was, did he give them to her willingly, or had she obtained them through other means? I began researching former employees, reaching out carefully through LinkedIn and industry events. 2 former inventory managers and a security supervisor had all left Elite Ship under clouds of suspicion, all for inventory discrepancies they insisted they hadn't caused. When I cross-referenced termination dates with inventory discrepancies, a pattern emerged. 3 people had been fired for mishandling inventory before me. And according to Tara's notes, my replacement was already asking questions. His name was next. They're firing anyone who notices the pattern, I realized. This isn't just theft, it's a systematic cover-up. The scope of what we'd uncovered transformed my anger into something colder and more focused. This wasn't just about clearing my name anymore. This was about exposing a criminal enterprise that had victimized multiple people and stolen millions from the company. We need to be strategic, I told Tara during a secure call. If we move too soon with insufficient evidence, she'll just deny everything and destroy what's left. There's something else you should know. Tara replied. Elite Ship is in acquisition talks. A larger logistics company is doing due diligence. Vanessa's been shredding documents after hours. This changed everything. Due diligence meant external auditors, financial reviews, and intense scrutiny of company operations. It was both an opportunity and a deadline. If the acquisition went through before we could expose the scheme, the evidence might be buried forever. Has your workplace ever scapegoated employees to cover up executive wrongdoing? That night, Tara sent an encrypted file containing security footage she'd managed to preserve, showing Vanessa personally directing the rerouting of damaged goods to her shell company's warehouse. Meanwhile, financial news sites announced that Global Transport was in talks to acquire Elite Ship Distribution for an undisclosed sum, with due diligence expected to take 6 weeks. The clock was ticking. With acquisition talks underway, we needed to move quickly but carefully. Acting alone was too risky. We needed allies with credibility and influence. I remembered Gerald Winters, Elite Ship's former CFO who had retired a year before Vanessa's arrival. During my time there, he'd been known for his meticulous oversight of company finances. More importantly, he had maintained connections with current board members. Finding his contact information wasn't difficult. Convincing him to meet with a disgraced former employee was another matter. I can spare 30 minutes, he said curtly when I called, clearly skeptical. But I should tell you, I'm aware of the circumstances of your departure. We met at his country club, neutral territory where Vanessa's network wouldn't see us. I brought only my most compelling evidence. The shell company registration linking to Vanessa's husband, the pattern of inventory write-offs coinciding with shipments to VR Exclusive, and financial records showing the Reeves' sudden prosperity. Winters studied the documents silently, his expression shifting from polite disinterest to focused concern. 20 minutes in, he closed the folder. Who else knows about this? He asked. A current employee who's been documenting the theft. 2 corporate fraud specialists I've consulted confidentially. And now you. Winters made a call. Change of venue, he said simply. My office. 1 hour. When we arrived at his home office, 2 other people were waiting. Patricia Ellington, a former board member who had consistently questioned Vanessa's rapid ascension, and James Morton, an attorney specializing in corporate fraud. Our meeting with the former CFO suddenly moved to a room with no windows. What you're describing isn't just theft, he said, locking the door. It's securities fraud affecting the acquisition valuation. Elite Ship is being sold based on inventory and performance metrics that are fundamentally misrepresented. The gravity of this shifted everything. This wasn't just about clearing my name or exposing a thief. It was about preventing a fraudulent acquisition that could have serious legal consequences for everyone involved. Meanwhile, Tara had carefully identified 2 colleagues she trusted implicitly. Diane from accounting, who had access to financial systems Tara couldn't reach, and Miguel from logistics, who could track shipping patterns without raising suspicion. They've both noticed things that didn't add up, Tara explained during our encrypted call. They were too afraid to say anything, but they're willing to help now. Our growing alliance gave me something I hadn't felt since the day I was escorted from the building. Confidence. With Winters' connections to the board, professional validation from fraud experts, and additional eyes inside Elite Ship, we could build a case too solid to dismiss. We mapped out a timeline against the acquisition schedule. Global Transport would begin their due diligence in 2 weeks, with financial audits starting the following Monday. That gave us a narrow window to compile our evidence and determine the best channel for exposure. The acquisition team will be your entry point, Winters advised. They have every incentive to uncover fraud before closing the deal. Have you ever realized a workplace issue was actually much bigger than you initially thought? That evening, we began organizing our evidence into a comprehensive legal brief, while Winters secured a meeting with Global Transport's due diligence team. On a whiteboard, we mapped the acquisition timeline against our plan, circling the critical date. The financial audit scheduled to begin in exactly 14 days. Over the next week, our team assembled evidence with the precision of prosecutors building a capital case. We needed documentation so thorough and irrefutable that even Vanessa's connections couldn't dismiss it. Winters provided a secure conference room in his home where we could work undisturbed. The walls soon filled with timelines, charts, and connection maps, a visual representation of the theft network we were uncovering. Diane from accounting proved invaluable. Working after hours, she extracted years of inventory adjustment records, highlighting patterns that would have been impossible to detect without system-wide access. "Look at this," she said one evening, pointing to a spreadsheet. Every Tuesday night between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m., high-value electronics were logged as damaged beyond repair, always approved by the same supervisor. Tara matched these records against shipping manifests she'd secretly photographed. The correlation was undeniable. Items written off as damaged were leaving the facility intact, bound for a warehouse registered to VR exclusive imports. Miguel from logistics took the riskiest step, approaching 2 delivery drivers who had handled these suspicious shipments. Both initially refused to talk until Miguel mentioned the acquisition. They were paid cash bonuses to forget certain deliveries, Miguel reported. One driver kept text messages with instructions from Vanessa's assistant about where to drop packages with no signature required. I focused on connecting the financial dots. Working with James Morton, the fraud attorney, we traced money flowing from VR exclusive imports to the Reeves' personal accounts, then to various luxury purchases. The timeline was damning. Large transfers consistently followed major inventory write-offs at Elite Ship. "This creates the complete chain," Morton explained. "We can show the items leaving Elite Ship, arriving at the shell company, being sold, and the proceeds funding their lifestyle." Our most dramatic discovery came from Diane, who had been reviewing financial projections prepared for the acquisition. The company's financial projection spreadsheet had a hidden tab, she revealed, demonstrating how to unhide it. When revealed, it shows 2 sets of numbers, one for the board and another tracking what they called special allocations. The hidden tab detailed exactly what had been stolen, its market value, and how the losses were disguised in official reports. It was essentially a shadow accounting system for the theft operation, and Vanessa had been careless enough to keep it in the same file as the official projections. She never expected anyone else to look at the file formatting, Diane explained. Most executives just review the summary page. By Friday, we had assembled our evidence into 3 categories. Inventory fraud, documented patterns of falsified records and diverted merchandise. Financial misrepresentation, parallel accounting systems, and hidden losses. Criminal conspiracy, witness statements and communication records showing coordinated theft. The final piece arrived that afternoon. Tara had managed to recover security footage from an archive backup, showing Vanessa personally directing the packing of damaged items that were clearly in perfect condition. As I organized the last of our documentation, I reflected on how my approach had changed. Months ago, I'd been consumed by the injustice of my firing. Now, I felt almost clinically detached, focused entirely on the systematic exposure of a criminal enterprise. Has your workplace ever maintained 2 sets of records, the official ones and the real ones? My phone chimed with an email notification. Global Transport Due Diligence Team arrives Monday. All departments prepare for review. Attached was a schedule showing the financial audit would begin at 9 a.m. with a full executive meeting, including Vanessa. The countdown to exposure had begun. With our evidence compiled, we needed to execute our plan with surgical precision. Timing was everything. Move too early, and Vanessa might destroy evidence. Too late, and the acquisition might proceed with fraudulent valuations. Gerald Winters made the first move, contacting a former colleague now on Global Transport's board. "I have concerns about Elite Ship's inventory valuation that could affect your acquisition," he said carefully. "This requires discretion, but you'll want your due diligence team to look closely at specific areas." This wasn't enough to stop the process, but it ensured the auditors would scrutinize exactly where we needed them to look. Meanwhile, I prepared for my role. Winters had arranged for me to meet with Global Transport's acquisition team as a logistics efficiency consultant hired to provide industry perspective. My real identity would be revealed only at the critical moment. Focus on the evidence, not your personal story, Morton advised during our final preparation. Your termination becomes relevant only as part of the pattern of cover-up. Tara executed perhaps the most delicate part of our plan. She anonymously submitted a detailed report to Elite Ship's ethics hotline, a system that, by corporate policy, triggered mandatory investigation and board notification. The report highlighted specific inventory discrepancies without revealing our full knowledge. This creates a paper trail they can't ignore, she explained. Even if they try to bury it, Global Transport's legal team will find it during due diligence. Diane strategically discovered the hidden spreadsheet tab during her preparation for the financial review, expressing concern to her supervisor, who was not part of Vanessa's inner circle. This ensured the discrepancy would be noted in official audit preparation documents. Miguel arranged for one of the delivery drivers to be interviewed during the logistics review, claiming the driver had valuable insights in his special handling procedures. Our most difficult decision was when to involve authorities. Premature legal involvement could send Vanessa into hiding or trigger document destruction. Too late, and she might negotiate a quiet departure with severance. We need to ensure the evidence is seen by multiple parties first, Morton advised. Once Global Transport's team flags these issues, filing with authorities becomes a necessary compliance step that neither company can avoid. The Sunday before the audit, we conducted a final review of our strategy. Every contingency had been mapped, every piece of evidence backed up in multiple locations. We weren't acting from emotion, but from a meticulously constructed plan to expose systematic fraud. That night, an automated alert pinged my phone, one I'd set up to monitor access to my old document repositories at Elite Ship. The night before the acquisition team arrived, someone accessed my old company accounts at 2:11 a.m. Vanessa was getting desperate, but we'd already backed up everything. She's searching for anything that might connect back to her, I told Winters during our early morning call. She must suspect something's coming. Tara confirmed it. She's been in the office since 5 a.m., reviewing files, calling emergency meetings with her team. Something's got her spooked. Perhaps it was the ethics hotline report, or Diane's discovery of the hidden spreadsheet tab, or word of Global Transport's unusual interest in inventory procedures. Whatever the trigger, Vanessa clearly sensed the walls closing in. As I dressed for my meeting with the acquisition team, I felt a strange calm. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about truth and accountability, the professional values I'd always championed. Have you ever watched someone frantically cover their tracks when they realize they might be exposed? As Global Transport's due diligence team arrived in the Elite Ship lobby for their 9 a.m. meeting, security cameras captured Vanessa standing apart from the welcoming committee, anxiously checking her phone for messages that would never come. The evidence was already in motion, beyond her reach. The security team escorted me through Elite Ship's lobby, the same path I'd walked countless times during my 12 years there. Now I entered as a stranger, badge-reading consultant, Global Transport. The executive boardroom hadn't changed. The long mahogany table still dominated the space, now surrounded by Elite Ship executives on one side and Global Transport's acquisition team on the other. The Global Transport CEO nodded as I entered, gesturing to an empty seat they'd saved. Vanessa was mid-sentence, presenting growth projections when I walked in. She glanced up briefly, her eyes passing over me without recognition before snapping back with sudden awareness. The color drained from her face as her voice faltered. I'm sorry. Who is this? She asked, struggling to maintain composure. The Global Transport CEO smiled. This is our logistics efficiency consultant, who will be providing an alternative inventory valuation assessment. I believe you may already know each other. I placed my laptop and a single USB drive on the table, meeting Vanessa's gaze directly for the first time since my termination. Good morning, I said calmly. For those who don't know me, my name is Marcus Donovan. Until 16 months ago, I was the warehouse supervisor here at Elite Ship. Whispers circulated among Elite Ship's executives. The CEO's face tightened with recognition and confusion. What is the meaning of this? He demanded. The Global Transport General Counsel stood. We're here to complete our due diligence. During our preliminary review, serious discrepancies emerged in inventory valuation and asset management. Mr. Donovan has provided context that we believe warrants immediate attention. I connected my laptop to the presentation system, bringing up a timeline that began with the missing platinum rings. 16 months ago, I was terminated after valuable merchandise disappeared on my watch. I began. I was accused of authorizing an improper transfer based on this document. The forged authorization appeared on screen. This document was created at 11:42 p.m. the night before the rings were discovered missing, using credentials that show I was logged in remotely. However, I was at dinner with 2 colleagues until midnight, as confirmed by time-stamped security footage from the restaurant. I advanced to the next slide, showing the security access logs. What wasn't investigated at the time was this badge access record showing Ms. Reeves entering the secure storage area at 2:14 a.m., hours after the document was created and hours before the rings were reported missing. Vanessa interrupted. This is preposterous. He was fired for cause. This is clearly a vindictive. The Global Transport CEO raised his hand. Please continue, Mr. Donovan. Slide by slide, I presented our evidence. The pattern of inventory write-offs, the shipping records to VR exclusive imports, the corporate registration linking the company to Vanessa's husband. With each revelation, the room grew more tense. When I displayed the hidden spreadsheet tab showing dual accounting systems, audible gasps came from both sides of the table. Over 4 years, approximately $3.7 million in merchandise has been diverted through this system, I explained. The losses were disguised as damage, returns, or shipping errors, all obscuring systematic theft. I concluded by displaying financial records showing how proceeds from VR exclusive directly funded the Reeves lifestyle improvements. The acquiring company's general counsel stood up and asked if I'd go on record formally. Every document is authenticated, I replied, and Ms. Chun has been recording conversations for months. At the mention of Tara's name, Vanessa's composure cracked completely. You can't possibly believe this disgruntled ex-employee, she said desperately. This is corporate sabotage. There's no proof I took those rings or authorized any improper shipments. That's when I played the recording, Tara's carefully captured conversation where Vanessa had bragged about stealing the rings to frame me. Her voice filled the boardroom, clear and unmistakable. I wanted him gone, so I took the rings myself. Security footage conveniently failed because I had IT update the systems. His signature was easy enough to forge. The recording continued for 30 seconds as Vanessa's face transformed from defiance to shocked recognition. She lunged for her phone, but Global Transport Security was faster, placing a hand gently but firmly on her shoulder. Have you ever dreamed of the moment when all your documentation finally proves your case? The room fell silent as the recording ended. Then, simultaneously, both CEOs began speaking to their respective legal teams in urgent whispers while Vanessa sat frozen, staring at her own damning words displayed as a transcript on the screen before her. The recording's final words hung in the air as Vanessa lurched to her feet. That's clearly edited, she insisted, her voice higher than normal. This is a setup. Marcus has manipulated that recording to frame me, just like he's manipulated all of you. The Elite Ship CEO looked shell-shocked. Vanessa, is that your voice on the recording? It's taken out of context, she stammered. I was discussing a hypothetical scenario with Chun. She was asking how something like this could happen. It was a training exercise. The Global Transport General Counsel tapped his tablet. We have the full recording, Ms. Reeves. There is no context that would explain away what we just heard. Vanessa changed tactics, turning to her allies around the table. Paul, tell them about Donovan's performance issues before the incident. Maria, explain how the inventory system had problems long before this. But the confidence that once commanded their loyalty had evaporated. Paul studied his notepad. Maria looked away. The Global Transport CEO stood. In light of this information, we're pausing all acquisition activities pending a complete forensic investigation. Our team will require unfettered access to all financial and inventory systems, past and present. You can't just, Vanessa began. We absolutely can, he interrupted. The acquisition agreement includes material representation clauses that appear to have been violated. Either we conduct a full investigation, or we walk away entirely. The elite ship CEO nodded slowly, looking suddenly aged. We will cooperate fully. He turned to his general counsel. Please contact our outside legal firm immediately and convene an emergency board meeting for this afternoon. The next hour unfolded with the cold efficiency of crisis management. Both legal teams huddled in corners, speaking in urgent whispers. IT personnel were summoned to secure all systems and prevent any document deletion. The doors remained guarded by security from both companies. I sat quietly, answering technical questions about the evidence, but otherwise observing the dismantling of Vanessa's world. I felt no joy, no vindictive pleasure, only the calm certainty that truth had finally emerged. The elite ship board meeting was conducted via emergency video conference. I wasn't present, but Gerald Winters was asked to join remotely to provide context. He texted me updates. Board voted unanimous suspension of VR and 3 directors pending investigation. External forensic accountants being brought in tonight. Your evidence package being provided to authorities. While I was finishing my final meetings with the global transport team, security quietly entered the executive floor. They walked Vanessa past my temporary desk, badge deactivated, carrying only her purse. The CFO was next, followed by the IT director and Vanessa's executive assistant, all key players in our evidence package. Their expressions ranged from shock to resignation. None made eye contact with me or each other as they were escorted to the lobby. Tara texted from her department. Auditors are here. Seizing computers. Everyone in shock. By late afternoon, the official company-wide email arrived. Executive leadership changes effective immediately. Comprehensive audit of inventory systems. Cooperation with external investigation. Business operations continuing normally. The sanitized corporate language couldn't mask what everyone understood. A systematic fraud had been uncovered, careers were ending, and potentially criminal charges would follow. As I prepared to leave the building, properly this time, through the front door, the elite ship CEO asked to speak with me privately. I owe you an apology, he said, looking genuinely distressed. We failed you completely. You were deceived, I replied simply. Many people were. The board has authorized me to discuss restitution, he continued. Your wrongful termination, damage to reputation, lost wages. My attorney will be in touch, I said, not unkindly. Today was about establishing the truth. Tomorrow we can discuss making things right. Have you ever witnessed the swift fall of someone who seemed untouchable? As I drove home that evening, news alerts began appearing on my phone. Elite ship global transport acquisition delayed amid accounting irregularities, read the first business headline. By morning, more detailed stories would break, and Vanessa's carefully constructed facade would crumble completely. The weeks following the boardroom confrontation unfolded like a corporate earthquake, with aftershocks reaching every corner of elite ship and beyond. 3 days after our presentation, the district attorney's office announced a formal investigation into what they termed systematic theft and fraud. Search warrants were executed at Vanessa's home, the VR exclusive warehouse, and several storage facilities registered to the shell company. What they found exceeded even our documentation. Merchandise valued at over $800,000 was recovered, including designer electronics, luxury accessories, and, most vindicating for me personally, the missing platinum rings that had cost me my job. They had never left the country, as Vanessa claimed. They were found in a safe at her vacation home. Criminal charges were filed against Vanessa, the CFO, and the IT director. The indictment detailed conspiracy, grand theft, falsification of business records, and securities fraud related to the acquisition. Vanessa faced additional charges for witness intimidation based on evidence of how she had targeted employees who noticed discrepancies. She'll almost certainly face prison time, James Morton explained during our update call. The evidence is overwhelming, and the DA is treating this as a high-priority white-collar case. While the criminal process moved forward, Elite Ship faced its own reckoning. The board hired an external firm to conduct a comprehensive audit of all systems and processes. Their preliminary report identified dozens of vulnerabilities that had enabled the theft scheme. 2 weeks after the exposure, Elite Ship CEO called me. "We'd like to bring you on as a consultant to help rebuild our inventory controls," he said. "No one understands our systems and their weaknesses better than you." I accepted with clear boundaries. I would work remotely, focus on system design rather than implementation, and maintain my growing role at Midstate Logistics, where my boss had been following the news with increasing appreciation for my skills. The work at Elite Ship was both challenging and healing. I collaborated with a team tasked with completely overhauling their inventory management. Many of my original design elements were reinstated, along with enhanced security features and validation procedures. Tara was promoted to compliance director, leading a new department responsible for monitoring inventory integrity. Diane and Miguel received recognition for their assistance in the investigation, with corresponding career advancements. The acquisition talks resumed, albeit with revised valuations and new leadership. Global Transport's due diligence team now included me as a key consultant, ensuring transparency throughout the process. Perhaps most meaningful were the systemic reforms. Elite Ship implemented mandatory dual verification for all high-value transactions. They established an anonymous reporting system with direct board oversight, and they created quarterly audits specifically designed to catch the patterns we had identified in Vanessa's scheme. 6 weeks after the investigation began, the CEO's apology email went company-wide. "We failed to protect our people and our processes. Effective immediately, we're instituting the Donovan Protocol for inventory management." The email detailed how the new protocol incorporated my original security measures with enhanced oversight mechanisms. It explicitly acknowledged that I had been wrongfully terminated after identifying discrepancies that should have triggered investigation rather than accusation. My settlement with Elite Ship was finalized shortly after. Full back pay, compensation for reputational damage, and a consulting contract that respected my new career path. The financial terms were generous, but the public vindication meant more than the money. When a story broke in industry publications, former colleagues reached out with apologies and congratulations. Several admitted they had suspected something wasn't right, but had been afraid to speak up. Their messages reinforced the importance of the new reporting systems we'd implemented. The platinum rings were eventually delivered to their original client, who had been told they were lost in transit. The accompanying letter explained the circumstances and apologized for the delay, noting the merchandise had been recovered through improved security protocols. As the dust settled, I reflected on how completely the tables had turned. The systems I had built, which Vanessa had exploited to frame me, were now being rebuilt stronger than ever, with my name attached to the core protocols. Has your workplace ever had to publicly acknowledge a failure and institute reforms named after the person they wronged? That afternoon, as I reviewed consultant applications for the expanded compliance team, an email notification appeared in my inbox. New job application received, sales director position. The name on the resume stopped me cold. Vanessa Reeves. Seeing Vanessa's name in my inbox felt like a collision of parallel universes. 6 years had passed since the investigation that exposed her crimes. So much had changed in that time. The criminal proceedings had concluded with Vanessa serving 5 years in prison for fraud, theft, and conspiracy. The CFO and IT director received shorter sentences for their cooperation. The rings theft that had cost me my job became just one exhibit in a much larger case that made headlines in business publications. My own career had transformed completely. After the acquisition finally went through, Global Transport created a new position for me, Vice President of Operations Integrity, overseeing security and compliance across their entire network. The role combined my warehouse expertise with the investigative skills I developed while building the case against Vanessa. The settlement included not just back pay and damages, but a formal apology published in industry journals clearing my name. More valuable than the money was the restoration of my professional reputation. Tara's career similarly flourished. As compliance director, she built a department focused on preventing exactly the kind of fraud she had helped expose. Her team developed monitoring systems that became industry standards, and she regularly spoke at conferences about ethical reporting structures. "We don't just track inventory," she would say. "We create environments where speaking up is safer than staying silent." Diane and Miguel both advanced into leadership roles, carrying the lessons of the Vanessa investigation into their management approaches. The four of us still met occasionally to reflect on how that period had shaped our professional lives. And now, here was Vanessa's job application, a desperate attempt to rebuild her own shattered career. Her resume strategically omitted her criminal conviction, listing a 6-year consulting gap to cover her prison term. She had applied for a mid-level sales position, far below her former executive status. I studied her application for several minutes, considering my options. The vindictive response would be to call her in for an interview just to see her face when she recognized me. The coldly professional approach would be to simply reject the application without comment. I chose a third path. I scheduled an interview with her name intentionally misspelled in the confirmation email, just enough to avoid raising suspicion. When the day arrived, I arranged for the receptionist to send her directly to my office rather than a conference room. The moment when Vanessa walked through my door remains etched in my memory. Her carefully maintained confidence evaporated instantly. The blood drained from her face as recognition dawned. Vanessa, how are you?" I said calmly. "Remember me?" She stood frozen, designer handbag clutched like a shield. 6 years in prison had aged her, but not as much as the shock of seeing me behind the desk where she expected an anonymous interviewer. I didn't realize," she stammered, "that I would be reviewing your application." I finished for her. Life takes unexpected turns, doesn't it? I closed her file and slid it across the desk. "I've reviewed your qualifications, and I'm afraid you won't be a good fit for our organization. We prioritize integrity above all else here." She nodded silently, gathered her belongings, and left without another word. I felt no triumph, no vindictive pleasure, only the quiet satisfaction of a circle completed. The system had worked as it should: crime, consequences, and closure. This journey taught me lessons I carry into every professional relationship. Document everything, even when it seems unnecessary. Trust your instincts when something feels wrong. Build quiet alliances with people of integrity. Always maintain your professional standards, even when others don't. The most important lesson came from Tara, who risked her own position to stand up for truth. "Sometimes doing the right thing is terrifying," she told me once, "but living with silence is worse." Looking back, I realized that what appeared to be the worst moment of my career, being escorted from the building in disgrace, actually set in motion the best professional evolution I could have imagined. It forced me to become more strategic, more thorough, and ultimately more successful than I would have been without that challenge. Document everything. Trust your instincts. Build quiet alliances. You'll thank yourself later. And remember, in business, karma eventually collects its debts with interest. What would you have done if someone who destroyed your career came asking for a job years later? If this resonated with you, please like and share. Subscribe for new stories every day. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I read them all.